Well, greetings everybody, and welcome to this world. This week, this week's Inworld review. It is the 22nd of October, 2017, and we're fresh off the other stage where we brought you the news. Now, last week we had a guest who didn't make it, and this week we have the same guest who's also not made it, which explains why we're a few minutes late, because we thought we were giving the benefit of the doubt. It's rather odd because we had him here yesterday. We were checking out the slides, and he's got a direct landmark and everything, and we saw we had it all sorted. So I don't really know what's happened, but we can't find him. But I'm here, and so is James Atloud. So welcome, James.
Hi, Mel.
James, of course, is running all our cameras at the same time for us. Not that there are many cameras today, because there's only two of us. So, standard cameras and two headshots. That's it.
Yep.
Now, our guest was meant to be Nikos Envoy, otherwise known as Nick the Greek. He's the CEO of the Greek Life Grid. And we were going to tell you a bit about that. I do have some shots and bits about that I will actually show a bit later. But we've come on air anyway, basically, because there's a little bit of PR we thought it would be kind of opportune to do, even though we haven't got any guests. Firstly, I'm going to go to our left-hand screen, where we have some various slides to show you, and I'll just run through them and talk as we go. First one is the reminder for our favorite event here, so to speak. Every Wednesday at noon Pacific time, Hypergrid Safari meets up on the location is HG Safari, the region on Franco Grid. So if you go to Franco Grid and look for HG Safari, you'll find the region. And that's the main clubhouse where the meetup normally happens. There are other clubhouses in OS Grid, Metropolis, and Great Canadian Grid in case of an emergency. But normally we meet at Franco Grid. So do join us then. I forget where we're actually going this week. I think Thursday did tell me, but you can also look up Hypergrid Safari on the Google Plus communities and get updates from there. Okay, she was with us last week, of course. I'm talking about Leslie Kling, who runs Tangle Grid. Just a reminder that the Halloween Expo continues at Tangle Grid, started last week, but as you can see from the sign, goes on to November 19th. One of many Halloween events taking place here, there, and everywhere. This is actually an expo, so it's although it's on Tangle Grid, the idea is people from all over the hypergrid may be exhibiting there. So you'll find them at Tangle Grid, and Expo Isle is the actual region you'll want there. Right, so let me move through. The next slide. Well, I'm pleased to say that all the submissions and stuff for proposals and stuff are now in for the Open Simulator Community Conference. I already know that there is a very full agenda. In other words, it is actually a struggle to fit in, the odd extra half hour that came in at the last minute. So it's obviously going to be a very packed conference. What I'd like to say, just get out on this program, is the conference is still looking for a variety of volunteers and helpers. There are lots of different categories, scripters, builders, stuff like that, most of which I think is taken care of now. But if you think you can be of assistance, do let them know. In particular, though, they're looking for volunteers, sort of lower level volunteers like greeters and stuff like that. And somebody you may know, Sunbeam Magic, is coordinating all the volunteers on that front, but more are needed. More are always needed, quite frankly. It's one of those cases where too many cooks really don't spoil the broth. There are 4 regions, 4 landing points, and all sorts of stuff that needs help. Also, this particularly we are looking for a couple of other moderators. A moderator is usually somebody who well, I think all our panels are taken care of, but we need people who can sort of stand on stage, for a half day and just be in the sidelines to introduce each speaker as they come on stage. So if you think you have the voice for it, or even background stuff without voice, do feel free. And the same with moderating chat and things like that. It's always helpful to have community voices in all the channels while the conference is going on. So it's as I say, the agenda is now completed. It's been shuffled a bit, which is why it hasn't been published yet, but there is still plenty of space for participation with volunteering for various things. To let them know for that. The place to go to is conference.opensimulator.org. And from the homepage there, you'll be able to get to everything you need. The only thing to point out is that the call for proposals is now closed, very definitely closed, because it's filled, very much filled. So that in itself is a good sign. Okay, moving on to the next slide here. I thought I had the other one that I can't see yet, but anyway. Now, the other big thing for this year, of course, is the Hypergrid International Expo. This actually happens the weekend after the OSCC. It's a totally different event, but we are sort of a bit allied, and it's in some ways an extension of the OSCC. Basically, this will comprise 4 half days, which will be in specific languages, French, German, Spanish, and Italian, as it seems to be going at the moment. What will happen here is that when you arrive at the expo, you will see 5 group inviters, and there'll be English plus the 4 languages, and you will choose to join the group that is your own native language, and translations and other text will appear in that group. So, for example, if you're listening to a French presentation in the French half day, somebody in your German group, say you're German, will be translating or doing a synopsis from French to German for you, so that you'll be able to follow all the proceedings, whatever the language, by following the chat in the group you belong to. So that way we can hopefully make the whole thing, all the 4 language parts, of interest to everybody. And of course there is an English group, an English language group, for which will translate all 4 languages for you. The Expo has its own grid that you can find at hie.ddnss.org : and the port unusually is 8006. That is because it's being hosted on the same server as another independent grid, so it needs different ports. And it's been kindly provided by one of the German grids who are hosting it. There's not much to see as yet. You're better off going to the website, which is the same address, hie.ddnss.org. But obviously you don't need the colon and the port number to actually enter the region. And basically, at the moment, it's mostly in the hands of Thozaremba and me, but we're gradually adding the 4 people that will be the organizers for the half days, who will be language specific, and sort of building it out from there. And we're doing our best to make sure there are translations available on the website of all the posts, so that you can read it in whatever language you prefer to read it in, if we get the translations accurate. Now, we're also still looking for presenters. We have had presentations submitted from different places. I know, for example, that one language, has had quite a few. Another language hasn't had many at all. So there's still plenty of room to fill up with, events and stuff. Again, you should use the website if you have a proposal that you'd like to put in, bearing in mind that this is about the hypergrid and about the international side of it. It can really be anything you're doing that is of interest to an international audience or has a particular international purpose, for example. What else do we need? Oh yeah, we need volunteers, of course. There's a variety, rather like OSCC, we do want people to act as greeters and stuff like that. But in our case, it's what we really need, of course, are people who are fluent in more than one of the languages that the Expo uses. So, if, for example, you speak German and French, that could be very useful. If you speak English and Italian, that could be very useful because obviously we have to include English for translations and such like. So the more we can get there, the better. And if you feel really bold, you might be able to come on into one of the language groups as a kind of moderator host. So you'd be helping with the conversation that's going on around the translation itself in the language group, so to speak. So please do get in touch if you're interested. Bear in mind the 4 half days at the moment are German language, French language, Italian language, and a Spanish language. That's right. Oh, there's too many of them. For this, the first year, we really couldn't move outside Europe, and we have, for example, we haven't even got Greek language. We can't at this point have 100 different languages, but we think we've covered a lot of them, and French and Spanish are particularly international languages as much as English is. So I think we feel we've sort of got things sorted between them. Right, I think that's it for that. We'll obviously have more news updating you as we go. But get it in your diaries. So this sign doesn't actually show it, but it is the 16th, 17th of December, which is the exact weekend after the OSCC that I was talking about a minute ago. Right. Now, let's see. I'm just going to click the home button here and check that there's no slides that I didn't show. Doesn't look like it. So there we go. Right, James. Like me, you are also involved as sort of part of the OpenSim organising committee. If you think of anything else we should be getting out there to those interested in OSCC, first of all?
Nothing off the top of my head. I know that there are so many presentations proposals that are coming in, that already it seems like we're going to have a very rich schedule. Has the deadline passed for proposals?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
We actually worked on the actual whole agenda on Friday, and it is fully booked. There's not a single gap.
Yeah.
Basically, there's been one proposal since then, which came with apologies for being late, and that is going to have to be slotted in. That's actually from Kevin Feenan, who's just come back from his Euro Editions conference. And another one which I hope they get in, but I'm worried that there's just no slots other than extending the day from by another hour, and it's already running from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. so it's quite a long day, although obviously there's a couple of lunch breaks and things.
Yeah. No, it looks like a great schedule. I mean, some of the topics are just brilliant, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes, indeed, and quite a few more panels this year that have sort of come in. For example, we, as I do a interfacing panel, sometimes called a viewer panel, but we're having a specific hypergrid panel this year, for example, as well as the normal dev panel and commerce panel, and there's a librarians panel as well, apparently. So very rich in panels, and I'm fond of panels because presentations are always pretty darn specific, whereas panels sort of open up into fairly wider ranging areas.
Great, thought-provoking for sure.
Yeah.
The other comment. Yeah.
I was going to say it's a bit like a TV show when you've got guests.
That's right. Well, and I think the other thing is just that we're always looking for volunteers, and there are so many things that volunteers can do to help out, from basic activities to helping coordinate people moving. So and it's a great place to get some virtual world experience doing something you might not always be doing.
That's true, and our friend Marcus Llewellyn is running the doing all the logistics, shall I say, for the broadcasting this year. But camera people are, in particular, always wanted. We've got the good old standbys. But as James says, if you think you're up to it with camera skills and stuff, you will get training if you need it.
Absolutely.
In return for volunteering, you get a lesson or two or three.
Yep, it's perfect. It's a great experience.
I can't guarantee a 6 month course, but you'll get a lesson.
No, I don't think so.
We are set up very much that way. Even presenters get tested on their speaking and stuff like that, if they want it. So there's stuff to be learned in everything, including just volunteering for something you think you might be good at. Right, okay, well, I'm going to move on to, actually there isn't much to move on to as far as the expo is concerned. It's pretty much the same thing. We're looking for volunteers. The easiest way to do it is at the website. Obviously, if you know me or there's a member, you can probably grab us individually. If you don't like the formalities of going to a website, I do hasten to add the sort of form on the website is nice and easy. There's no, for our conference at least, the expo, there is no, massive rights release. All you do is agree that you'll probably be filmed and tell us what you want to do, and that's about it, really. Presentation wise. So I would say the biggest thing we need is translators, but obviously even translators aren't going to be much help to us if we don't get a nice full schedule of proposals. And as I say, we're getting we really need, I think the German and possibly the Italian sections are the ones we really need a few more proposals for. But we actually need more. It's early days, so we do need more for all of them, really. Okay, so I've covered Safari, I've covered 2 conferences. Plug the Halloween Expo. What else is there to do, I wonder? Well, I'm just checking in the background here, and Nikos Envoy clearly doesn't seem to be online, either in our background channel on Skype, or I'll just double check here. I can't see him in World either. It must be something quite serious, because he was here for about 2 hours yesterday rehearsing, and we got all the times right and everything. So I don't know what's happened. But because he was going to, no, that's somebody else. Sorry. Somebody else has come online, but I'm getting confused now. Right. So. Yes, because he was going to be presenting talking to us last week and this week, we actually have some slides loaded over here on the other screen, which I guess James can go to. And I thought we'd just fill out the rest of this very brief show, obviously, with some pictures that I took when I went over to Greek life and hop around the various regions. So I'm starting with one. I believe this is the Acropolis. Acropolis. Yes. That's the word. I'm not very good at this. I was going through these with Nick yesterday, and he was telling me, oh, yes, that's so-and-so, and that's so-and-so. But, of course, I've long since forgotten. So you're just going to enjoy the pictures. Obviously, this is more both of the heritage part of kind of Greece. Uh, Moving on, this is actually your landing when you go to. This is Greek life grid, by the way. And I keep thinking I can right zoom and click on the slides, and does not work. We'll see a bit more as we go through the slides. That's your landing point anyway. Obviously, you've got the hypergates to teleport other places and teleport within the grid itself to the various different regions.
Well, and Mel, I can zoom into areas on the photo if that would be useful. If you want to point something out.
No, I think this is just. I was just reiterating it as Greek life grid, but I think you can see that, and we've got some other pictures coming up that show that better anyway. So yeah. My next shot, right? Well, there you go. This is completely different, but that's their logo and Greek life on their little flag there. I forget this isn't actually the landing point. I think it's the landing point of an actual region rather than the grid itself. Strange parrots in a pirate hat. Quirky little things you find on every grid, really. And I guess that's. I presume the other flag is actually the Greek flag. It must be. It wouldn't be anything else, really, would it? So that's another landing point. Right, and another case of like a coliseum or something. If I think this is on the edge of a region called Athens, but I won't swear to it. But again, some more of the sort of classic architecture rather than the Mediterranean style architecture we'll see in a minute. Moving on, this is a long shot from somewhere or other, and in fact I believe it's probably the region called Athens again. Various sort of classic buildings kind of in the background there. Yep, it says it all really, doesn't it? Right, moving on. Right, now this is a kind of boating area on one of the regions. There's a couple of rather primary colours of those boats hanging out in the water there. But this is the first shot of something I was going to be asking Nick about, because at some point he actually gave me or made copyable one of these little buildings. I actually rather like these. They're kind of, it's hard to know, but I think they're made of stone. But they're all the edges of those walls and the stairs and stuff are very curvy, like they've been chiseled into a nice curve. And then a lot of straight rectangular prims that have just been organized. And they've got this sort of, sort of like a stone house flavor. It's almost as though the stone's been carved and then the house has been carved into the stone. And obviously that wouldn't be the case, but the rows of these houses where you see them have their very peculiar flavor, and then they've got these sort of globes on the top, which means on the top floor you're in a sort of dome looking out. And I kind of like that. It's I'm presuming Nick made them himself, because I haven't really seen anything similar anywhere else. They're not your average building picked up from a freebie region on the hypergrid. So moving on from that, temporarily we are in a building. An NPC was dancing when I was there, so at least it looked a bit occupied. But obviously it's a club, so it's filled when events are on and not otherwise. You'll also see there's a PayPal sign there. I had actually meant to tackle Nick on commerce he uses and stuff like that. I think they have their own currency. I think they have a Podex region. No, sorry, not Podex, Globits, which would have linked with last week's show, actually. But as you can see, the this lady, or I presume it's for her, has a PayPal sign. Yep, tip me as I wiggle my NPC booty or something. Let's move on. Right. Well, good to see the Greek Life Grid also has a learning region. It's called e-learning library. E-learning island, and it's as you can see, it's Greece Digital are the group that actually run this particular region.
Who's Who's that avatar down on the street there?
That tiniest little blob, if anybody can see him, might just be somebody who accidentally stood in the way of his own camera.
I think I know who that hat belongs to.
Yes, it does look that. It looks like the hat of my traveling mesh avatar,
Yeah, yeah.
who you have never seen on this show because his lips don't move yet. But one day he will make an appearance on this show. He's a nifty little avatar because he's the same in high fidelity, the same in science space, the same on OpenSim with all my avatars, and until yours truly has to start talking, we move back to a prim job or whatever you call the avatar.
Yep.
Yeah, a prim job. I'm not sure you call an avatar a prim job, but I do. Okay, moving on from the mysterious person in a hat visiting the learning institutions. This actually is an off-sim build. I think that is like a one-piece unit you drag off sim, and the same with the boat. But I sort of, it's a bit of greenery, and Greece doesn't seem to have a profusion of greenery, and I like a bit of greenery, so I thought this made quite a nice shot with the old boat in the background. I don't think you can actually walk to where that picture is because I think it's hanging out off the edge of the actual simulators. Most builders know that you can do such things. Right. Now, talking of greenery, again, I think it's called Stormy Heights or something, this region. It's a sheer, massive terrain coming out of water. And, this, I'm not sure how they got up there to build it. Whoever built this, I guess they must have lived in the teleporting age, because there's no steps up to this as far as I can see. But once you're up there, you've got this sort of huge building occupying there. And the next shot I took was, my kind of shot, basically. A lot of greenery. This is actually the same build that you just looked at. This is the back side of it, and the photo was taken after I teleported up there and was actually on the ground. So it almost looks a bit like one of my builds, to be honest. It's got that flavor I kind of like, in contrast to what lies beyond in this case. So, nice to have contrast as you move around the regions, even though the overwhelming flavor is, of course, Greece. Right, and typified by this, because we're back on the beach. This is part of one of their club islands, and obviously this is a beach club, or rather, it's a beach bar in a beach club. That nice sort of outdoor style of architecture for that little. I love those sort of the tent sort of like structure on the top of these things. Sort of is more than your standard conical prim, put it that way. Right, what's next, he says. Okay, unless I might be wrong, but I have a feeling this picture was taken on Nick's own region, his private region, so to speak. And as I put to him, the obvious thing here was, well, hang on, where's all that Greek architecture gone? Because this was sort of Japanesey. But obviously a nice little hangout with sort of seating bits on the grass in the front, and couple of deer or something hanging out in the foreground. Okay, moving on. Right, we're back on the, as I mentioned on the slide a few slides earlier, back onto this sort of, I'm assuming it is a Greek style of architecture or Nick's architecture. Again, the same types of stairs, they're very nicely rounded, so they're not just flat, rectangular prims and shaded nicely. It's almost that prim simplicity, but with the added touches that don't make it look quite so simple, and when you've got different types of buildings that share this commonality of look hanging around, it gives it a very individual flavor. Here is another one, for example. This one's got stairs at the side. This is obviously a bigger house, but again, it is sharing that general sort of flavor. Um, and also very telling, I guess, without Nick here to comment. I'm not really quite sure, but lots of these houses, it seems to me that when you want to go from downstairs to upstairs, you always do it from outside rather than have interior stairs. So they're actually modelled, with the idea you go out the front door and up the steps to your next floor kind of thing, even though logically it looks like it's the same sort of residence. Right. And again, here we are again, the same kind of architecture. I think the one on the right of this picture is the one we saw a close-up of, but from a distance, similar architecture here. And I'm zooming around on these pictures, enjoying the look of them, and I don't know why, because you can't see me. Right, moving on. Now this is the full wax, so to speak. I'm not sure whether this isn't Athens. It's another area, and we've been on safari to this a couple of times. I'm afraid I've gone and lost track of what the name is. My memory is not good without notes in front of me. Again, you can see a similar kind of architecture here. There are also slightly harder edges on this one. But if we were able to zoom out from this picture, this is actually zoomed into a small area of really a pretty giant city, or town at least. And all the buildings and separate residences are on different levels, and they're all connected by these outside staircases. And I chose this shot because I was able to zoom in enough to show you a bit of the detail about the way it's constructed, and just leave it to your imagination what that looks like if you zoom out 10 times. It's a kind of a labyrinth, but although from the air you can sort of plot the routes and things. When you're actually in there and down on the land, it's a lot harder, because you'll be walking up the steps in the foreground and you'll just see a left turn. You don't appreciate the grandeur, as it were, when you're down on the ground, particularly, but from a long shot you do. So again, something that is, I think the architecture here is really something that's very unique to the Greek life grid. I certainly haven't seen anything even similar in other places. But then again, I haven't traveled everywhere, just as many places as I can get to. Right, again, some final long shots here. This one shows the way up to one of the cities. I think this may again be one of the back views of the plateau with Athens on it. On the other hand, it may be something completely different, and I may have it all wrong. But again, the same kind of architecture is sort of popping up here, there, and everywhere. Now we're into the Greek Life Grid Club. This is a region which is, the grid's own club region. So if Greek Life Grid itself is putting any events on club-wise, this is where it happens. And the stage seems to be full of everything that is needed by any possible performer. Actually, presumably the stuff on stage comes on or off depending on who is performing. And I think this might be the last side. I'm pretty sure it is. Offshore rocks here. A little sort of gazebo type thing. I'm on an island out there, waves crashing on the rocks, tree in the foreground, and another, well, I say it's quite a Mediterranean looking house, I guess, though it's obviously not the same architecture that we've been seeing everywhere else. Anyway, yep, that is it. So rather a shame that Nick the Greek, as he's more commonly known, his avatar at least, can't be here. I was rather hoping, well, I know he was planning to tell us quite a lot more about things as we moved slightly more slowly through those slides. So I've done it anyway. I've shown you the slides, which means we've entertained you a little bit. So as I say, or did say, it's a very short Inworld review this week. I can't see the time, but I reckon we've probably only been here 30 minutes or something. You'll be much relieved. A short Inworld review. What's happened? But at least we were able to get on here with an update. So Now I'm going to go around all the guests asking for last minute thoughts. Right. Well, that means you, James. Have you any thoughts for the week, by the way, or anything else of interest you want to use this opportunity to
No,
comment on?
well, there are obviously a lot of activities coming up through the fall here that are going to be very exciting about Open Simulator. I think as a closing thought, I tend to get caught up in the developer aspect and some of the issues about releases and all that type of thing. But I love segments like this where we look at just the amazing creative things that people are using this platform to do. It's really astounding. And the Hypergrid Safari, I mean, there's just nothing better than that, to tour around and see this work that, sometimes I become a little concerned, on the status of the platform, but it's clear that people are doing some great things. And like you, I just like to get into a world and explore around and look at the vision that people have. It's just wonderful.
I think so. One of the one of the reasons I wanted us to do a hypergrid panel at OCC this year is that to me the hypergrid is OpenSim's killer app.
Yeah.
If you imagine OpenSim, we're going about developers and all this and different strands and stuff like that. But so long as they don't go far enough away from each other, they break the hypergrid, that is the killer app of this platform. I mean, you can look at mesh platforms, which tend to be standalone platforms. Sciencebase, High Fidelity, Sansar, they're all of that. They're different as sort of, experiential things. They're more spaces than worlds. Combined spaces and worlds. But you can also argue that to a great extent they are walled gardens with limited, who some of them do open source content and code, but in a limited way. And, but the fidelity of some of these new things, I keep thinking, state of the art, a new platform for, to supersede the days of Second Life and things. But apart from the freedom of it being open source and the magic in that, with Open Simulator, its power to grow is the hypergrid, because anybody can install an Open Simulator package, and because they can put it on the hypergrid, they can immediately pitch it to visitors and put it and make it a venue and get anybody from the world, all over the world, hypergridding in. You can also, of course, install it as a classroom and make it off the hypergrid to use. Again, it's open source. It doesn't cost you anything as a rule, but beyond overheads on servers. If you're hosting it yourself, you can just do it, and you don't need to be on the hypergrid. That's a bonus with OpenSim. But at the end of the day, to me, OpenSim's feature is the hypergrid. That's the thing that makes it unique. High Fidelity has its own grid and way of jumping between places, which are actually sandboxes on your own computer most of the time. Sciencebase is all hosted by them, and they have methods for you to jump to different regions and different experiences, the way Linden Labs offering this new Sansar does. And Second Life, in a way, allows you to jump anywhere, but until you come across that great big wall around Second Life, and you can't get in or out of it. A system which is not only open but has this built-in connectivity where you can have international communities. You can jump across the world like you can jump to a website anywhere on the planet. That is the killer app. It's like you have pages online, and the World Wide Web provides a way of linking between them, and that's what makes the web. We have virtual worlds online, but only the hypergrid provides a method at the moment by which you can link them all together and jump between them. Yep. So it's the killer app to me, and I think that's what our conferences and expos are really about, and I hope we're going to reflect that at OSCC too, with especially Sunday's focus on the hypergrid. Not totally, but to a great extent. Thank goodness for Crystal Lopez. who, of course, created the hybrid grid and will be on the banner with us. Okay, well, yes, I think I've run out of steam too, considering how early it is, but never mind. I think that's it for this week, folks. My apologies that our guest didn't turn up, and so we thought it worth coming on to give you a little bit, and just call it the shortest Inworld review ever, which it probably is. But we will be back with something. Something, yeah, don't know what, but something, same time, same place next week. And until then, my thanks to James, who of course has to be here, but running the cameras and sitting in. Thank you, James.
Oh, absolutely, Mel. I enjoyed him a lot.
Yeah. And with that, I'm just going to wish you all the usual, which is a very good morning, a very good afternoon, a very good evening. And actually, it's so early, maybe tomorrow hasn't come yet. Nah, it's come somewhere. So good tomorrow for those of you where it is. And we're out of here. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.